Greetings, dear viewer, and welcome back to an all-new instalment of Atheism Exposed, the series in which I shine the light of truth onto the dank recesses of the atheist worldview. In today's episode, we'll take a look at some of the typical features of atheism that make it one of the most dishonest and immoral religious beliefs in existence. So, without further ado, let's get going. You see, atheism makes a number of claims about the world. Some of them open, some of them kept hidden from new recruits until they start climbing the hierarchy of the atheist movement. The image atheism tries to present to the world is one of random chance and entirely natural processes, many of which have never been proven to exist in the first place. But then, when you begin to dig a little deeper, you begin to unearth the dark heart that beats within the atheist cult. The worship of death and sacrifice and the glorification of the immoral and the profane. Horrific as this is, it actually gets worse. Despite clinging to immorality and depravity in a literal mountain of unprovable assertions about the universe, the atheist will turn around to a Christian and demand proof of the truth of God, as if atheism has ever shown the veracity of any facet of its disgusting belief system. This inversion of the burden of proof is just typical of atheist hypocrisy. Why should we Christians be the ones to provide you with proof of anything? We don't owe you anything of the sort. You are the ones who have come up with these wholly ridiculous assertions about the universe. And you provide nothing substantial to substantiate any of them, and yet you'd think that we are the ones who should prove God to you. No, God owes you nothing. Second on this list is denial. Frontline atheists like to make the claim, we just lack a belief in God, as if such a thing is even possible. As an experiment, why don't you atheist cult members try and claim that you lack a belief in air? See how far that gets you. I mean, Jesus is every bit as vital for life as the air we breathe. So it's just an absurd idea to claim that he doesn't exist. So logically it follows that atheists do believe in God. Their claims to the contrary therefore take on an entirely different meaning. Like a cancer patient who refuses to accept the reality of their condition, many atheists will bury knowledge and understanding of their predicament. Deep down they must realise that the immoral atheist lifestyle is leading them to damnation. And just like a cancer patient, they need to realise that the treatment for their condition is right there in front of them if they would just wake up and accept it. Why do more atheists not take responsibility for their immortal lives and accept Jesus? Well, this question brings us on to the third part of the list. One of the more peculiar aspects of the atheist mindset is blind, vicious hatred of God and Christians. This is especially visible on the internet. YouTube is rife with these atheist cultists who froth at the mouth and lash out and spew all manner of slander and foul-mouthed invective against anyone who would dare believe in God. I mean, why is this? Why does the atheist hive mind? Why have they got stuff against us? I mean, the truth is simple. As with any cult, the atheist movement is a brainwashing and mental conditioning process, and evoking powerful base hatred against the religious is a defense mechanism against the message of God. Without this built-in hate reflex, more atheists would have to be open to the knowledge and understanding of God and their immortal soul, and without this hatred, atheism would peter out and dwindle to nothing. So it's necessary for the survival of the group, I guess. If you speak with enough atheists, you soon get the sense that they are trying to hide something. Outwardly, they present the idea to you that they are perfectly normal people with a developed moral sense, just like anybody else. However, judging by their actions, this is demonstrably not the case. Completely aside from atheist ritual practices, which frequently involve human sacrifice and hematophagy, that's blood drinking for the less literate of you, atheists also publicly promote and engage in all manner of disgusting and immoral acts. I mean, these I've already described to you in previous videos, so I won't labour the point, but the upshot of it is this. Atheist claims to morality have absolutely no foundation whatsoever. To get around this problem, they simply deny that real moral standards exist, and this apparently frees them up to declare any crime against humanity, any perversion of life and love, anything they want, to be a good and moral act. Now this goes a long way to explaining why everything atheism touches turns into a sinkhole of sin and depravity. It also leads neatly onto the next reason why atheism is an intellectually bankrupt religion, namely, illogic. Immorality and illogic naturally follow one from the other. It's a demonstrable fact that humans have an innate moral sense, the conscience. This, being innate, is a gift from our Creator. Lower animals don't have this, but humans, being created in the image of a divine Creator, are endowed with it. How do we know this? Well, it follows logically. Observe. 1. If humans have a shared moral standard, it must have been imbued with it at our creation. 2. Creation implies a creator, by definition. 3. Only a divine and maximally powerful being could create the universe. 4. Humans have a shared moral standard. Therefore 1 is true. 5. Therefore 2 and 3 follow indisputably from 4. 6. Therefore God exists. Atheists cower in the face of logical argument like this, and usually just resort to name-calling and profanity once presented with the logical syllogisms demonstrating the truth of God. I mean, for good measure, here's another one. 1. Without God, absolute knowledge is impossible. 2. Knowledge is possible. 3. Therefore God exists. The only way to dispute this is to deny premise 2, that knowledge is possible. However, disputing this only leads to a situation where nothing is knowable, a philosophically useless position to hold. Because if nothing is knowable, then no other premise can be true or false, because you can't know whether it is true or false. The whole denial of premise 2 is ridiculous. So, atheism as a concept falls apart once we apply logical scrutiny to it, which is why its adherents need to perform all sorts of mental gymnastics and jump through all sorts of hoops just to hold the edifice of its self-contradictory doctrines together. And when this inevitably fails, the avenue of next resort is the next reason on my list. Quite ironically and somewhat hypocritically, the atheist is highly likely to make statements pretending to be in favour of rational inquiry, civil discourse, and free expression of ideas. However, in practice, this is most certainly not the case. As a little experiment, just try posting anything about God or Christianity in the comments of a YouTube channel run by an atheist. Even in the same video where the said atheist has proclaimed themselves to be in favour of free speech, and claim they won't delete comments or otherwise censor people who disagree, it's more than common for dissenting views to be quietly removed to sort of preserve the illusion of consensus. While YouTube comment sections are not the most important social platform, they do provide a neat example of the same activity happening on a larger scale in other social contexts. I mean, Christians all over the world face this discrimination on a daily basis, from the creeping march of secularization pushing Christianity out of the public square, to the Christian viewpoint being marginalized in discussions of public policy. I mean, are we not citizens? Do we not pay taxes? Why must our views be disregarded in favour of somebody else's by the government? But by far the worst example of this is the final reason why atheism is an intellectually bankrupt religion. As a person who grew up in the mid to late 20th century, I've borne witness to some fantastic advances in our society. Over the course of my life, avenues of real science have brought us all manner of new technologies that were inconceivable a few decades ago. The mobile phone I use today has more processing power than the first desktop PC I used when I was in my teens. These gifts, and many others besides, are things we can give thanks to God for. However, science also has a darker side, which recent decades has seen emerge from the shadows to essentially consume all of the scientific academia. The promotion of scripturally false and scientifically untenable hypotheses like evolution and heliocentrism have become standard practice despite their total lack of scientific merit. You don't really need more than basic observations to see that the entire universe is not rotating around the sun. However astronomers try and spin this, the rotation of the stars would be offset out of alignment with respect to the Earth, if this were the case. You would see stars move against the background of themselves over the course of a night, if this was the case, but it is not, and as this isn't the case, we can conclude that geocentrism is therefore fact. Likewise, evolution. If you take a bacteria and you stack endless mutations on top of it, you won't end up with a fully functional human being, you'll end up with a fundamentally broken bacteria with mashed DNA. This is total nonsense. Evolution is simply not even remotely possible, because mutations don't provide new information, they don't provide beneficial change, they only destroy organisms. It's really that simple. These ideas have simply come about because members of the atheist cult have forced their way into science with an agenda to separate people from God. The Bible states that the world is 6,000 years old, and 4,400 years ago there was a catastrophic flood that covered the whole world. Today, we see billions of animal remains in sediments laid down by a flood. That's pretty conclusive evidence for a global flood. So why aren't these evident truths accepted by the scientific establishment and taught in schools? Well, that's a question I've already answered. The scientific truth of the Bible is suppressed. Atheists have their claws so deep into science that any views that oppose their lies can't ever get heard. Really, atheists? If your lies are so convincing to the credulous, why are you afraid to let Christians be heard? Are you scared that people might see through the monstrous absurdities presented by atheists if you let alternate evidence be presented alongside? Again, what are you afraid of? Ultimately, though, that's what it comes down to. Fear. What I've presented here are reasons, but also defense mechanisms. The atheist worldview is wholly dishonest, so they need to rely on these methods to prop up their beliefs. Frankly, it's just a bit sad, but I do hold out hope that one day the Lord will speak to their hearts and show them the true way and the light. Until then, I shall be praying for you. Until next time, go with God.